And we should be live. Welcome back again, nerds and turds, to another late night repair stream. We had to cut things a little short earlier to help out with the kid, but they're fast asleep and they should be for the rest of the night. So we're going to try to knock out all of the repairs that we need to. We left off actually with Chad's with some DC offset symptoms, and right before we were putting it back together, we already got the filter caps replaced. We already got the Schottky barrier diode replaced, and we found our 10 ohm resistor next to the subwoofer connector was also destroyed. So we are going to put that on, and then we can finish putting this HomePod together. So let's just scoot that back in there, give it a little flux. Okay. We'll just give that a second to cool off, and then we will see if it's ready to go. Cheers. I want you to focus inside. Nice. Alright, get that connected to our test sub again. So, like I was saying when we were working on this during the last live stream repair earlier today, we're looking for less than 50 millivolts on our multimeter, which give me a sec to reset here. There we go. We're looking for less than 50 millivolts of DC voltage and a good clean bass signal there when it plays the startup tone. And we'll be good to go. Beautiful. Oh, excellent. We've got just around 1 millivolt of DC offset. Can't really get much better than that. We've got a nice clean startup sound coming from the bass speaker with no significant popping anymore. So this appears to be good to go. Let's get it put back together. And then once it's fully back together, we'll give it another brief test to make sure we got it together correctly. And then we'll let Chad know that it's fixed up and ready to go, but we will leave it plugged in, testing overnight just to make sure that there isn't anything that we may have missed. Sophie, welcome to the stream. I'm doing alright. You know, tell you what, we recently had another HomePod debrick itself on our stream over there. Unfortunately, while the camera wasn't working, so we didn't catch it live, but we will just keep it going until more debrick themselves. We changed the timers up a little bit, so now they turn on and off a lot quicker, so it's a little more entertaining to watch than it was before. And also I replaced the music with one that doesn't loop like crap. Two HomePods for stereo sounds like way better than just multiplying the sound of one HomePod times two, in my opinion. It's like getting two monitors for the first time. It's like so much more than twice as productive that you can be with just two monitors. But once you taste two, you get curious. You're like, what can I do with three? Oh, I could do a lot with three. So you get three. And then you're like, okay. Alright, cool. Let's do four. And next thing you know, the temperature of your room is 10 to 20 degrees hotter than the rest of the house because of all the monitors that you've got. And now you've got all these HomePods radiating heat too. You're like, oh man, I need more than two of these. I need to know what like 4 of them sound like. I need to know what 6 of them sound like. Okay, I need to fill up a room with like 10 or 12 of them and see what that sounds like. Telling you, oh man. And especially as these hopefully get cheaper over time. It would get so much cheaper to create a whole home, or at least a whole room, 360-degree immersive audio experience. And sure, it's not going to be the best one maybe that money can buy, perhaps. But in my opinion, again, it's definitely going to be one of the easiest ones to set up, and also most likely some of the best sounding, or one of the best sounding experiences that honestly most people will probably ever have heard. Because you gotta remember, a lot of people just use what they got, or they go for cheaper or mid-range stuff. I mean, hell, when phones used to come with headphones, most people I saw at least around were just using what came with their phones. Gotta be careful though. Once you add more HomePods, you gotta make sure that you have the Wi-Fi to handle them, because they can be very, very, very chatty. Especially if you've got a bunch of other HomeKit stuff on the network. And especially if you're AirPlaying to multiple HomePods at the same time, you'll want to make sure you've got a pretty decent Wi-Fi setup to support that. Yep, that's gonna be the problem as you add more HomePods onto your network. Wi-Fi up to at least Wi-Fi 6. I think Wi-Fi 6E and newer changes this. But everything up to that point, so that includes the HomePods, no matter what Wi-Fi router you're using, but with the HomePods in particular, especially, with Wi-Fi, things generally can't all talk at the exact same moment in time. They all have to take turns talking. So when you've got a bunch of IoT devices chatting at each other, they're eating up your Wi-Fi's airtime. So, you can imagine the more HomePods you add, the less throughput and bandwidth, whatever, that your Wi-Fi overall is going to have, even if you're not actively using the HomePods. Just by having them connected to the Wi-Fi, they're going to be doing things in the background, and they're going to be eating up a bit of your Wi-Fi performance. And each HomePod you add, you're going to be able to see, more likely than not, a bit of a difference in your Wi-Fi network. Once you've got more than 5 or 10 HomePods, I'd say you should start looking into Wi-Fi access points, prosumer stuff like Ubiquity, or what's another good one? Honestly, I don't have a whole bunch of experience with them, so I've been very, very happy with my Ubiquity gear. Comparison between HomePod and SingCell Alpha. There is no comparison. But there's no harm in pointing a camera at the two and playing the same song and letting other people determine for themselves. I've got a lot of videos that I've got to make, but as of right now, I couldn't tell you when we will have that out. I'd like to do it in the next few weeks. Seems like, for the most part, repairs have been slowing down a little bit, so we should start seeing a bit more free time to explore more projects on the channel here.
I'm having trouble connecting to the internet.
That is beautiful.
For more info, I'm having trouble connecting.
Volume buttons light up
I'm having
almost nice and even. Let's see if we can get those lined up.
I'm having trouble connecting to the internet.
Yeah, don't you talk back at me.
I'm having...
That's more like it. Beautiful. You shut up. Okay. Number 1 is fixed. Let's grab our next repair, which is actually 2 of them. They actually come all the way from Korea. I believe their name is Sung. We'll go ahead and put that up on the screen. And let's see. And they've got 2 HomePods. So the first one we're going to look at, one of them has no power and the other one often cuts off sound. So not sure which one we're going to end up seeing first, but let's go ahead and find out. And while we're here, let's share a link to the stream with Sung here so they can watch along. Okay, let's get their box opened up and see which one we've got to work on first. So the thing with the HomePods is no matter how many of them you add together, they're not going to be able to reach the same kind of bass extension that the SingCell Alpha is able to produce. It's just the amount of bass that this thing kicks out at sub 20 hertz is absolutely insane. And this is and I've got 2 12-inch like absolutely hyper ridiculous home theater subwoofers in my living room, and the SingCell Alpha destroys them at low to medium volumes. If I crank the home theater system all the way up, yeah, I can get more volume out of my home theater subs, but the SingCell Alpha just has so much tight and pronounced and just excellent bass response at the low end. The HomePods, don't get me wrong, they've got an excellent bass response, but they do not reproduce bass as loud or as clearly as the SingCell does, especially when you start going down below 40 hertz. The SingCell just shines, between 15 to 45 hertz. It's incredible. But HomePods, I'd say they probably start to fall off really short around the 40 hertz range, I think. So no matter how many HomePods you add together, they might sound magnificent, but they won't just have quite as much bass extension as that one SingCell Alpha ever will have. Part of that has to do with how big the subwoofer is in the HomePod, and part of that has to do with how big the HomePod itself is. You can only get so much bass and so much frequency response from so much speaker and so much space with that speaker. Alright, so here's the first one. What do you guys think we've got for number 1 here? Do you think we grabbed the one with no power, or do you think that we've got the one with sound that cuts out? So I think what we'll do is, since the sound cutting out is a little vague, we're going to try to find the one that won't power on, and that's the one that we're going to fix up here and now. For the one that they describe as the audio cuts out, we're going to power that up and leave it powered on and let it test until we can reproduce their issues so we know for sure what we're dealing with before we go in and try to attempt any diagnosis or repair on it from the inside. So, number 1, what do we got here? Okay, so this is the one with no power. We've got about 4 to 6 watts of power draw from the wall, so that's pretty typical for no power HomePods, or at least most of them. And that usually happens when, of course, that diode on the amplifier, as part of a bad batch of those diodes it seems, goes bad and fails. So I'm going to grab their other HomePod and just verify really quick that this one does power on. We'll go ahead and get it factory reset and start testing it to see if we can repro its sound issues. Alright, so this one's powering up. I'll give it a chance to boot up and we'll see if it's got like a really loud pop, which would indicate a DC offset issue, or if it sounds fun and we've got something else going on.
I'm having trouble connecting to the internet.
No?
For more info.
No, I don't hear any significant popping. Siri sounded just fine. So I don't see anything immediately wrong with this one here, but like I said, we're gonna leave this plugged into power and reset it and get some tunes playing through it so we can see if we can reproduce their issue before we even take it apart. So we are going to set that to the side. Let's put a note on there so we don't mix them up. Okay, so let's get started on this one with no power. Start off by taking our top touch cover off. We're going to use our iFixit Jimmy tool. And we're just going to work around this and cut through that adhesive that's holding it down. It's going to take a few laps around before it actually comes off. And we don't want to try to pry up on this plastic. We want to keep our tool perfectly parallel with this plastic so that we don't scratch it or crack it trying to get this up. There we go. Now we can work on the display. display is out. Let's work on our frame next. What HomePod are you using more often for media consumption? The first gen, second gen, or mini? The only time I use the mini is for the mini at my office desk at my day job office. That's the only time I use the mini because I'm not going to leave a full-sized OG HomePod at my work office desk when I'm only there for a few hours once a week. The mini is perfectly suitable for that. I only play it for a few hours in the morning before anybody else gets in. Primarily while I'm at home, I am using the SingCell Alpha in conjunction with my first gen HomePods and the second gen HomePods. Nope, almost missed one. Alright, so the woofer is out. Just checking its condition. Looks good, smells good, feels good. Yeah, so I've got, where's my phone? At this current moment in time in the living room, I've got 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 HomePods in the living room, plus the SingCell Alpha. And it's not necessarily about, how loud we can make it. It's about how much detail we can bring out from what we're listening to without having to turn it up so loud. Of course, turning it up really loud, that's a whole different experience, but a lot of it for me is being able to enjoy a lot of it without having to turn it up really loud. Which, and again, don't get me wrong, I love to turn it up really loud on when I'm home alone and throw on some really bass-heavy tracks. Yeah, same here. I pretty much don't use my HomePods for any of the smart features. I do have like I enabled the smoke alarm detector stuff, but we pretty much don't use them for anything other than listening to music or movies. On a rare occasion, if we use voice commands, I have Siri disabled on all of the OG HomePods, and I only have Siri enabled on the minis and the second gen HomePods, because the hardware in those are much more modern, and they're going to just simply, in my opinion, they should just handle Siri requests a lot better than the first gens will. I'm using all of those HomePods with this alpha. Is it stereo or mono? So, it's all stereo. Yeah, for sure. Because all of the HomePods I'm connecting to, they're all still stereo paired. So each of the pairs I'm connecting to, they still have their respective left and right channels. And then throughout the living room, of course, I've got all of the HomePods configured for the left channel, of course, on the left-hand side, and all the right channel ones on the right-hand side. And then, of course, depending on what I'm listening to, it's just really cool. It doesn't really matter if you're sitting in the right place in the living room facing forward so that left is on your left and right is on your right. That's not really my goal. My goal was to have more of just a spatial experience. So that way, no matter where you are in the living room, if something is playing from, say, the left channel, it's just going to sound like it's coming from like somewhere over here versus something in the right channel coming from somewhere over here, somewhere different. And you could, I guess, accomplish the same thing by just having a couple of stereo pairs and mixing up which side the left HomePods are on and which side the right HomePods are on. So you could have, like, for example, let's say you've got a square living room. You've got 4 HomePods, 2 stereo pairs. So you've got the front stereo pair and the rear stereo pair. But you've got your front stereo pair set for left and right, and you've got your rear stereo pair actually set for right, left. So that way, if something's playing from the left channel only, it's actually coming from your front left and your rear right. And then, of course, right channel, front right, rear left. It's a bit of a different experience than having everything that's coming out of the left channel only coming from your left-hand side. We're in. All right, what kind of diode do we have here? 1748K on that date code. Place your bets, place your bets. Yep. Oh, come on. If I can use it right. Yep, that diode is dead. So you know what that means. Time for a new one. Tappity tappity tap tap tap. Tappity tap 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 tap. Give it up. Give it up. Alright. Then we give it a good old Happy Gilmore swing. Right off the board. Knocked our cap off there a little bit. Let's just flow some flux on and tidy that up. There you go. That's how you fix that. If you bump that cap off, do it fast, throw some flux on there, put your heat gun back on there, and it'll flow itself right back into place. Don't freak out. You can fix it. Can I still get Dolby Atmos while using 2 pairs of stereo HomePods, 2 in the front, 2 in the back as surrounds, with a sub on AirPlay 2 on the Apple TV? To be honest with you, I don't actually know. Because I can't I don't know if there's a way to tell if you're actually getting Dolby Atmos, and if you are, which devices are playing Atmos. So honestly, I don't know. You might actually be better off going with Sonos if you're looking for a better movie experience. Especially with their new Sonos 300 that came out. That thing looks pretty interesting. I definitely want to get my hands on one to try out. Comparisons to the HomePod so far sound like it blows the HomePod out of the water. However, the Sonos 300 still, at the end of the day, is not a full 360-degree speaker. So you can't just place it in the middle of a room and expect it to sound the same no matter where you're standing around it. And that's one of the big things that I like about HomePods. And you got to think about it. That's not something that you want from a movie watching experience in the first place. As far as like being able to move around the room and the sound doesn't sound like it's coming from anywhere else. Like for music, that's great. That's what you want. But for movies, you want something that's more aware of what channel or what speaker's getting what channel of audio. And you're definitely going to get more control over that from Sonos. And also, I think you're probably just going to have it's going to sound better too if you piece together the right system. Because again, you get a dedicated Sonos subwoofer, and that's still going to blow a HomePod or a dozen HomePods out of the water, because sure, the HomePods sound great, but they're not going to go below somewhere around 40-45 hertz. A dedicated subwoofer from a 10-12 inch HomePod, or not HomePod, a 10-12 inch subwoofer like the Sonos is definitely going to accomplish that. I've heard the opposite. I heard that the Era 300's bass was much punchier than the HomePod. But that's why I want to try it myself. Okay, let's see if this turns on now. and if it's got any other issues or if we can start putting this back together. Hey, we've got power. Oh, beautiful. Excellent offset, well within spec. Beautiful base, no issues with power. This one's ready to put back together. first layer mesh on my white HomePod is loose. Not like it's coming out, but like it doesn't have any glue to align the pattern. Yeah, I've seen that a few times. I'm not sure what instigates it. It doesn't seem to be just them inherently sitting around and rotting, nor does it seem to be a sign of anything to really be worried about. It just seems to be a result of maybe something environmental, like maybe higher than normal humidity, or maybe somebody got something wet on it. I've personally accidentally done the same thing to one of mine when I was trying to get a stain off of it, and I scrubbed the mesh too hard and it started separating the layers. But it's nothing to really be worried about. It's not going to affect functionality or anything. Alright, let's see if it works. Hey, there we go.
I'm having trouble connecting to the internet.
Alright, volume buttons light up nice and even. It sounds great. So this one's ready to go. As for their other one, we are going to need to factory reset that and give it a sound test to see if we can repro their issues. So we'll save that one for tomorrow. Let's move on to the next repair for tonight. This one comes from Joshua. Let's pull up their email and find out what's wrong. Alright, so recently started encountering an issue with my HomePod where it will work normally before making a very loud pop and then restarting itself. Okay. Let's get their box opened up and see what's going on here. Let's take a quick check here and see if we find anything obvious. Ooh, wow. Okay, that's a hell of a pop. So, I think we've got something more along the lines of our classic DC offset here. Let's get this taken apart and fixed up. Hey Josh, glad you could make it. Oh, of course. That's one of my favorite things about what we do here, is being able to share with you guys the repair instead of you just like waiting around and hoping that like all of this is legit and your thing actually got worked on and fixed. Or if anything, just to see what it looks like on the inside. It's really cool. That was one of my favorite things as a kid, was going with my parents whenever they took one of our cars to the mechanic, or even just to the tire shop. It was really cool to be able to sit in the lobby and watch them work on your car. And then as I got older, I really got into electronics. And I saw, people like Louis Rossman and Northridge Fix, of course, making a business out of electronics repair, but putting the content on YouTube. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. I'd love to do that one day. Long story short, we found our niche in HomePods, and well, most of the repairs are pretty straightforward enough that we can do them live in front of people without like taking it apart, diagnose it, waiting it for parts to show up weeks later. We usually know what parts we're gonna need going into it. And since nobody else offers repairs for these, we can pretty much, for now, we can focus on HomePod repairs and stock up on parts to do that for others. Not to mention, I love the things. I love how they sound. I still think they are unbeatable. For what they do, they are unbeatable. I think I brought this HomePod from the UK with me to the US and bought an American power cable and changed it over. Nah, that's not gonna have anything to do with popping. Your popping issue is incredibly common. The reason why your HomePod is popping, like many others, is, like we've got up there, it's called DC offset. In simpler terms, DC offset is simply how far away from 0 volts you are. So it doesn't matter if you're positive or negative 50 millivolts or 5 volts. That's called 5 volts DC offset or 50 millivolts DC offset. It doesn't matter if it's positive or negative. Ideally, you want your audio amplifier to be 0 volts DC offset, because DC voltage is bad for your speakers. It's bad for your amp. And when DC voltage is applied to a speaker, you hear that popping sound. Another thing is DC voltage is, kind of an inherent. It's gonna happen with Class D amplifiers like what's used in the HomePod. So what you do is you filter that DC voltage with capacitors. Problem is, over time, those capacitors that are supposed to filter that DC voltage from the audio signal naturally decay over time. And not only do they no longer become effective at filtering DC voltage, but they actually start getting worse again. They'll actually have the opposite effect. So, the worse that those filters get, more often than not, the louder pop that you hear. And when those filters are so bad that they're allowing so much DC voltage through, resulting in other words, too much DC offset, the amplifier will detect that and force a restart and play that classic death fart sound. Like that. I don't know if that actually worked or not. I got a Stream Deck here that's supposed to play the sound, but it looks like it might not have. I don't know. Is the replacement more reliable than Apple's original apart, or will it just happen again eventually? So, the replacement parts should be more reliable than Apple's parts. I can't say absolutely certain, because we don't know exactly which part Apple used for this. But the parts that we do use to replace these ones with should last at least a couple years. If not, there will be other things with the HomePod that will break before those filters give up again. More likely than not, it'll get bricked by some software update, or Apple will just outright no longer support them and make them unusable. But all that said, I give a 1-year warranty. So if you're in the US, for the first 6 months, I'll cover the shipping even on top of the repairs if the same problem happens again. And then, of course, up to a year after those first 6 months, you cover shipping, but I'll still do the repairs again for you. If you're international, just for others watching, because of how ridiculous international shipping can be, which it's understandable. Try shipping an 8-pound package yourself across the ocean for less than $100. But anyways, if you're international, I'm happy to offer the same 1-year warranty, but I can't do anything about the shipping. So you'll have to figure out the shipping, but I'm happy to fix it up again for you. So it's kind of a shitty situation, but at the end of the day, it's an awesome speaker. And in my opinion, spending a little bit of money every few years at the least to maintain that experience is worth it to me personally. But I don't know, I'm a little crazy. And I'm sure within the next few years we will have more alternatives and more options than just these things here. Because I'm not die hard, take the HomePod with me to the grave. If something objectively better comes out, I will absolutely hop on board. But I won't leave the HomePods behind. I'll keep fixing them. I'll keep them around. They're good for what they are. Have you had any HomePod Gen 2s with this issue yet? I have not. Not to this extent. So the popping sound that you hear when it goes in or out of standby roughly every 10 minutes or whenever you wake it up, if it's a quiet popping sound, that's normal and that's pretty expected. In that case, yes, I've heard even my 2nd gen HomePods, they also pop on occasion when they go in or out of standby or when I unplug them from power, but it's pretty quiet. And that's okay if it's a quiet pop. That's normal. That's okay. Everything is working fine. But it's when it gets louder, when it's really noticeable, or especially if you've got, if it's restarting on you, or if it's farting and restarting on you, that's obviously a problem. But quiet popping, things are working just fine. Okay. So we're going to, before we do any repairs, we're going to power this amp up, and it's going to be connected to our test woofer here, which is connected to our multimeter up on the screen there. And we're going to just really quickly confirm what we believe to be the problem here, which is those filter caps going bad and allowing too much DC voltage through the amp into the speaker. More than 50 millivolts warrants replacing the filters. More than 200 millivolts is within damage territory. And then it takes around 2 to 3 volts or more for death farts to occur. So let's take a listen. What's it got? Oh, wow. Okay, so we're at 400 millivolts. We're almost at 450. And that's another thing to note. As these capacitors warm up to operating temperature, another natural behavior of these capacitors is the warmer they are, the less effective they are at filtering DC voltage. So as they warm up to operating temperature, this is only going to continue to grow bigger and get worse. So let's give this some new filters. Let's get that DC offset down to less than 50 millivolts. And while we're in here, we're going to give this a new Schottky barrier diode. That's the part that likes to fail and cause the no power issue, which is usually what these come in for. Only diodes with certain date codes have been failing, but we've been replacing all of them that come in regardless. This one does not have a date code that typically fails, 1752K, but we're going to replace it anyways. Not something that you generally want to do when you're talking about electronics repair, just willy-nilly replacing something even when it's still working just fine. But given the history of this part in particular, and only having the correlation of seeing the date codes that are failing and which ones aren't to go off, correlation isn't always causation. We're going to err on the side of caution. We always replace that diode. First up though, let's get our filters replaced so we can fix the issue this came in for, and then we'll take care of the rest. Oh, well, that works too. Okay, let's get some flux on there, put some fresh solder down, and then we'll put our new caps in. I hate this solder so much. I'm never buying this stuff again. This stuff sucks. I'll show you what it is in a sec so you can avoid it too. HTM. It's supposed to be rosin core. Even with my flux, this stuff kind of sucks. Does not flow very easily. But we got those caps on there. So let's give this a new diode and then we can test it out, see if we've got our problem fixed. That'll do it. Let's cool this off, and then we will see if it's all good to go. Okay, what's it got for us? Give me less than 50. Beautiful. That's what we're looking for. An offset as close to 0 as we can get. Less than 50 millivolts. Can't really get much better than that. So, this looks fixed and ready to go. Let's finish putting it back together. And think we will call it a night. Save the, if it looks like we've got 3 more to fix up for tomorrow. Tony, welcome, welcome. Yeah, late night stream, you know it. Kid would not sleep, but they finally got to sleep, so we're finally getting to do some repairs. Oh, that is the... shit. I can't point the camera over there. Here we go. That would be the D-Brick stream over there. With the little status light going on and off. Alright, let's make sure it still works. We'll of course leave it powered up overnight to make sure there aren't any other outstanding issues, but we'll just sanity check it's good here. Excellent. What's the weather? Oh, she's not talking to me. We'll just get the volume buttons up. Very good. And then I just want to make sure it has sound, so... Okay. Yep, and yep, okay. All right. Well, folks, that's all that we're going to get to here tonight. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to leave a comment down below. If you're looking for more info doing your own HomePod repairs or reaching out to get it fixed for you here on the channel, feel free to check out the website, nixfix.com, where I've got a dedicated section for those common issues that you can fix yourself, or my contact info so you can reach out to me and get the process started.